Back. Well, Blink Charging is a leading owner, operator, and provider of electric vehicles, charging equipment, and services. Here to discuss the impact of the infrastructure bill and on a greener auto industry for his business and for the sector is Michael Farkas, CEO of Blink Charging. Mr. Farkas, thank you so much for your time. Two questions for you here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. $7.5 billion has been allocated in the infrastructure bill. First of all, is that nearly enough as the president tries to make this push by 2030 to have half of all cars on the road be electric vehicles? And what is this doing for your business in particular?
It's a very good start. I don't know if it'll get us all the way there, but it's definitely a very good start. For our business in particular, it's amazing. It'll allow us to deploy more charging infrastructure that we own and operate. It will also allow those that buy equipment from us to be subsidized in their purchases, which will, without a question, add many, many more charging stations than there would be without the Biden administration's programs.
So, Michael, I know that you were already awarded nearly $25 million in grant funding this year to help build out these charging stations. Can you give us an idea of now what this influx of, I guess, new money is going to mean? Or where in particular are we going to see these charging stations pop up? Because I'm here in New York City, and unless they're, I'm missing them, I don't see a lot of them.
You are missing them. They're in garages that are subterranean garages throughout the city. We have relationships with a lot of parking garage operators, and you just don't see them. In valet-operated parking facilities, you have to let your valet operator know that you need to fuel your car. And in most locations, or a lot of locations, there are. You can use our mobile application that you can download on the app stores, both Google and iOS, and it'll show you all of our different charging stations. And we do have quite a lot of them in Manhattan. But without a question, this will add a lot more charging stations in all areas. In areas that may have not been really impacted by EVs today, this will allow those to invest money in those locations where we might not have without these government subsidies. Typically in the past, as you mentioned, the $25 million grants that we received just this year alone that we were awarded, those are typically grants where we receive approximately 80% in reimbursements. So it's an amazing thing where you're literally taking 2 dimes and buying $1 with it, but it really allows us to use our capital and expand that capital to get into more locations than we normally would have without the government funding. And with that, it's so impactful. I mean, there are no words to describe it. We're in a majorly growing business, and to have the government help us with $7.5 billion, it's going to impact not only us, but every single charging station company and infrastructure company and EV company. It's going to allow us to put more charging stations in the ground. Will alleviate range anxiety that people feel, hey, can these electric cars go these distances? And will spark more buying. And then again, additional investment in infrastructure. We're very excited about the programs. And these programs impact us in 2 different ways. It allows us to sell more hardware to others and to deploy charging stations that we own and operate. And that's our main business at Blink, is owning the charging stations, not just selling the hardware. We prefer to make our money in the long term over the sale of the fuel through those charging stations.
And that's part of your growth model that makes you different from any of your competitors. I do want to talk specifically about a little bit about Blink's growth. Quarterly results, revenue was up 607% year over year at 6.4 million. Sales and contracts were also up by about 350% year over year. Can you give me an idea of the breakdown versus commercial use and then residential use?
Okay, we are, another thing that really separates us from all of our competitors is we're the only truly vertically integrated EV charging infrastructure company. We have charging stations that you could buy on Amazon for dedicated parking spaces or in your home or in a carport. And then we have DC fast chargers that are along highway routes that allow you to charge in 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on the state of your battery and the quickness of the charge of your car. And we have everything in between. It's very important for us to be able to have an offering for all of our different property owner types and different types of EV drivers. We're seeing a lot of uptake on the residential side, but what we're really seeing tremendous amount of growth is in our commercial charging market, both those that we own ourselves and those that we sell to others.
Well,
And Michael, just from where you sit, what are some of the biggest obstacles to mass adoption? I would imagine that getting more of these charging stations into more cities is going to be huge for people to feel comfortable buying an EV. But to your mind, what are some of the biggest obstacles at this point?
There are none. I would say it's more range anxiety, which is not a reality, is what's once that's alleviated, I think more consumers will buy EVs. Once you see more charging stations in the ground, you'll feel more comfortable to drive EVs. The fact of the matter is the average driver in the U.S. drives less than 40 miles a day. We have EVs out there now with 2, 3, 4, and even 500 miles in range. It's very rare that someone sits in a car and goes 400 or 500 miles on a single charge. And with the infrastructure that's out there today, DC superchargers, the Tesla network, our charging stations, there's no reason today why one wouldn't buy an EV. It's just an anxiety. That's not real.
Well, the president definitely agrees with you there. He hopes people agree as well. We'll have to leave it there. Michael Farkas, CEO of Blink Charging, thank you so much for joining us today and for your perspective.